technical superiority loss, and you said that sounds like the worst possible way to ever lose anything ever. So that's why I said that, but clearly the joke didn't land. So
I totally forgot about that. Bisping called it a ghost guillotine. That was a real thing. Yeah.
That was a legitimate quote he said to someone.
But in terms of, you're looking at any guy in the UFC, there are two guys that really stand out as scary dudes.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Pins and Punches podcast. I am your co-host, Tanner McHugh, aka TrueTan Wrestling, the wrestling guy, joined by my co-host and friend, Josh Derrick, the UFC guy, aka ASAP Joshy. The podcast where we talk about everything UFC, wrestling, movies, and everything in between and stuff like that. But before all that, Josh, how the heck you doing, man?
Wonderful. We made it to episode 2. I never thought I'd find myself here, but episode 2 is, well, it's being made right now.
Dude, that's the hardest part sometimes, I swear, of this stuff. When I started the channel and then this, sometimes just getting to episode 2 is the best feeling, because then you can just keep it rolling and everything.
After last week's episode, I was like, dude, let's record another one immediately. Well, that's
the thing I realized all this week, or since we finished the first recording, there were so many things, especially going through editing and everything, and then just going through a week of life. There were so many things. I was just like, I can't believe I didn't mention that when I was talking about this. I guess it's just nerves of a first podcast or whatnot, even though it's just two friends talking. But there were so many things. I was like, oh, I should have mentioned this, or I can't believe we didn't talk about this. But that's the whole point of it. Got endless things to talk about. So that's good, at least. First of which, dude, we got to talk some football. I seriously can't believe I didn't mention it, because you were at the Steelers' third game. And then for those who don't know, Josh is a huge Steelers fan. Dude, what'd you think of the the game against, who'd they even play? Colts, right?
Yeah, they played the Colts. I gotta say that George Pickens fumble was the closest I've ever been to puking during an NFL game. That was a rough watch. And normally he's the guy, and to see a mistake like that, it's heartbreaking, it's vomit inducing. But I've been so used to mediocre Steelers football for the past few years that it's like, to see them start 3-0, have a tough loss against the Colts. Of course, it's Joe Flacco. You can never get rid of him.
He
just sneaks up.
I love the Flack dog.
just when you expect them least, Joe Flacco's on the Colts now. Okay. But yeah, that was a rough go. But I have a lot of hope for the rest of this season. I think the team is trending in a better direction than they have been the past few seasons. So high hopes. They're a franchise that you're always going to be. There's a level of mediocrity that's been plaguing the team, but they're still the Steelers. It's still that same franchise, and hopefully they'll get more than 9 wins this season.
I know. Feel like we're in high school and middle school. Flacco's back. Is it Andy Dalton, the old
Andy Dalton?
He's a starter for the Panthers. I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones, but it just feels like we're in high school again with some of these quarterbacks. I can't believe how long some of these dudes play. Or Steelers backup quarterback Russell Wilson, right? I mean, I just can't believe how long some of these dudes play for.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, he's still kicking it. I think he's either 40 or 41. And, coming off of Achilles, he's still playing his brand of football. I like seeing Aaron Rodgers play. He's one of those quarterbacks. It feels like I've been watching him my whole life. Like, it feels like from the time I could remember watching NFL football, I could remember Aaron Rodgers. So he's kind of like the last of that original set that I remember from way back in the day.
I think he won the Super Bowl when we were in like third or no, we might have been.
Yeah, he beat the Steelers.
Yeah, were we in like 6th grade or something?
That would have been 2011, I think, or 2012.
6th grade.
Yeah,
6th or 7th grade. I only remember that because I had like a bad grade on my. Remember they used to write. So we used to have these planners, school planners. For those who didn't go to Tamaqua High School, but we used to have these planners. And teachers would write your grades in them. So it wasn't just for homework. They'd write your grades. And I had a bad grade in it. And I was terrified for my mom to sign it. But luckily it was the Super Bowl. So they were a little distracted. And I got them to sign it then. But that's one of the only reasons I remember that. is because of that planner that it was back then.
So
Oh,
what teams are you following up with? I know you back in the day you were on the Falcons, but your recent, well, not, I guess not so recent anymore, but your move to Cleveland may have shifted your loyalties somewhere. Where do you stand now with your favorite teams?
yeah, dude. I mean, I still root for the Falcons here or there, I guess. Just looking back, I mean, I just missed a lot of good years with the Eagles, so I'm slowly
Mm,
just switching back to my roots with everything. You could call me a bandwagon, that's fine. But I don't know, I just like catching up with my dad on the Eagles now
mm.
again, so I missed some good years there. But definitely the Eagles. Like if the Eagles and Browns would play, I'd root for the Eagles.
Mm,
Um, but dude, it's just weird. I'm sure you hate Browns fan or just the Browns organization being a Steelers fan, but it's just weird how different the Browns fan base or organization is compared to like an Eagles or Steelers
mm.
fan base. Maybe just because a year's a heartbreak. I don't know, but it's hard not to root for them. The fan base is
Right.
pretty cool, so I'll root for the Browns. I mean, that's the market I'm in, so I'm normally
Mm.
watching the Browns anyway. So that's one thing.
Yeah, the Browns and the Bengals, they're teams that I always want to see lose, but they just can't match the level of vitriol that Steelers fans feel for the Ravens. You know, I had my
Oh, dude,
buddy
I
asked me that
know.
the other day. He's like, "What do you think of the Ravens?" Least favorite team in the league. If there's one team I never want to see do well in any capacity, it is the Ravens.
Dude, I mean, again, more of an Eagles fan or watcher than a Browns fan. And I'll go in spurts with it. Some weeks I don't really care about the NFL, especially if a big wrestling event's on or something. But dude, every year there's a Browns game, especially now that the Browns, I don't know about this year, but especially now that the Browns are all right the past couple of years. There's always a game where Lamar Jackson just absolutely torches the
Mm.
Browns, and it's just tough to watch. Like it's any fan, it's tough to watch except
Yeah.
Ravens fans. And then there's a game where it's just such a good game the whole time, and that's what I think. I used to love college football way more, but these past couple years, it's hard not to just see how much better the NFL is because
Mm.
there's so much good parity. It's not like out of nowhere
Right.
parity. It's just you can tell there was a huge game plan that worked or didn't work. And normally when those teams get blown out, they just get smacked. Their game plan goes right out the window. But it's
Mm.
kind of cool to see a game plan in the NFL work out and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, I went through a little spurt where I was quite the college football fan for like a few years. And then once I became a UFC fan, that's where my Saturdays are now. So, you know, I don't
Isn't it
wa-
nuts?
yeah, it just kind of flipped the switch. And it's like I get my football fill from the NFL. So instead of like before I was watching football Saturday and Sunday all day. Now I watch fights all day Saturday and football all day Sunday. So my weekends are still booked, but
Oh
you know
yeah.
how
I
it
mean,
goes.
it's just such a fun time of year.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, it's kind of bizarre. The both the sports we enjoy have weigh-ins, so dudes are
Mm-hmm.
constantly trying to cut weight and things like that. It's weird a sport like that really is just all year round, where sports where they're not cutting weight and not putting that stress on their body have very clear breaks in this. I
Yeah.
was just thinking that about that before we hopped on. The second the NCAA wrestling season starts, it's like college football just drops off for me. Like
Mm.
I just can't keep track of it anymore because I just get so involved in that.
So this will show my lack of knowledge about NCAA wrestling, but what is the season? Like, when does it start for everyone? When does it end for most? And when does it end for the champions?
Yeah, it's super, super close to. I don't know. You probably don't remember much of like when I was in wrestling, but it's almost identical to that. So, start practices, official practices, October. I mean, they dudes train all year long and
Mm-hmm.
everything with their team. Coaches might be there or not, or go to club practices or whatnot. Um, but it starts October is a month of training essentially, just all practices, and then November 1st is when they can start competing. So there'll be a couple duels this year. It falls on a weekend, so there's going to be a lot of opening season tournaments. Like Michigan State Open is a huge one I love watching because Michigan State's there. Michigan sends starters. Ohio State sends starters here or there. So November it starts competition, and then March is middle of March, getting near the end of March, right around March Madness basketball and everything is when they do the NCAA tournament. And that's it.
Okay.
So basically October 10th is official practices and then like March 20th this year I think starts. It's actually in Philly this year.
Oh, okay. Might have to
Yeah,
make
I
it
know.
out.
I know. We're going actually.
Oh,
I was just
okay.
thinking about it. We could do a live show, but I'm trying to think when we'll even get in because I think we're getting in pretty late, just
Right.
due to work and stuff. But
Mhm.
that's all right. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
So I guess the question that's on everybody's mind is who was number one?
Oh man. So what John's alluding to is we'll recap here a little bit of who's number one. So this is my reality, I guess. But I will tell you this, dude. So I've watched Who's Number One since high school. It's been going on for a couple years now, and it just usually pits number one versus number two ranked high schooler at each weight class from 106 all the way up to heavyweight, and some weight classes are missing depending on availability. But of all the events of who's number one I've watched, this one was easily the best. And the numbers kind of back it up. So when I start saying some things, I feel like you might relate it to a card because this is the one thing high school and NCAA, this is an all high school event, but it's the one thing that's super, super similar to a UFC card. Just think of it as every single one's a belt consideration,
Oh,
except you
okay.
just get moved up in the rankings. They don't get a belt or anything, but
Mm.
it's a big thing to win. I mean, it's the two best high schoolers at a weight class going at it.
Mm.
Um, but just some huge notes. There were two 1v1 matchups, which if you think a weight class, that shouldn't be possible. So there were two weight classes where someone lower bumped up to face the other number one,
Mm.
which I think is like the first time that might have ever happened at Who's Number One this event. The first ever four-time Who's Number One champ. So not only was he good through high school, he was good enough his eighth grade year to get asked to come as a freshman, which is super, super rare. There's only been two or three to ever do that. So he's this kid named Anthony Knox was the first kid ever to win four Who's Number One titles, if you want to call him that.
Mm.
It was number one viewership of any Who's Number One ever. And then just the combination of the number ones going at it was incredible. And then one thing this was probably, besides talking about the Steelers last week, this was easily the biggest thing I could not believe I did not mention to you when I was talking about Bassett and Zepeda wrestling. So Bo Bassett got revenge over getting technical superiority pinned last year. You you were the one
What
who
is
mentioned
that?
that to me. One time we were talking I think at a bar or something or just at your place, and you said you watched the Olympics and you said they mentioned someone got technical superiority lost, and you said that sounds like the worst possible way to ever lose anything ever. So that's why I said that, but clearly the joke didn't land. So
Oh,
that's why I made
I
you look.
totally forgot about
Yeah.
that.
So that's only in freestyle. This was folk style, but he got tech fault, so lost by 15 points, but he then got pinned.
Mm.
So he put him to his back, went up by 15, but then pinned him. So he lost by a lot and then
Mm.
came back and beat that same dude. So that was the headliner, and it lived up to the hype. It was a great match, it was a lot of fun, but the dude who won last year and then lost this year, Daniel Zepeda, his coach is DC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so DC has a huge club in California just for wrestling and I
Mm.
think fighting, but I only really follow the wrestling stuff. But when I was the only thing I mentioned to preview it last time was that match. And when I got off the call, I was thinking, and then I was going through all the matches in my head to kind of prep for this episode. And I was like, oh my gosh, Cepeda's coach is DC. And I was like, that would have been such a great way to connect it
Yeah.
all. He had to have still been fighting when you got into it, right?
No,
So you probably just missed him versus Stipe. That was his
yeah,
last fight, right?
yeah, because I
Man, Stipe
think
really hasn't fought, man.
yeah. I think his final fight against Stipe when he retired, I think was early 2020, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't watch it, but I started watching, I think, August of 2020. So I would have just
Okay.
missed DC's active career. I mean, of course, I've known DC from the beginning because he was commentating the
Yeah,
fights,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but as a fighter, I never watched him live.
Yeah. Dude, it's crazy. This you'll think is weird. I think DC is great at announcing UFC. I
I
think he
agree.
has like some people need like I think if you give him enough time, just announcing, people get used to the voice. But you hear some people, and you're just like, wow, that's an announcer. I couldn't see them doing anything else in life.
Yeah.
So I think he kind of has that fit for that realm. He talks pretty well for UFC and he knows what he is, but
Hmm.
he announced NCAAs this year and got so much hate on social
I heard
media
about
that
that.
he said
Yeah.
like he's never doing it again. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
I
saw
was
him like
there
quote
in
that.
Kansas City, so I didn't really hear him, but just from doing different videos and everything, I kind of heard it when I watched the replays. And I don't know. I didn't really think it was all that bad. I think it got
Hmm.
way wrestling fans, they can be a little dramatic sometimes. And I mean I'm a part of that world too, so I
Uh-huh.
get it. But I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was funny. I thought some of the things he said was pretty funny, but
I
it's
mean,
just
when
weird
I'm
that it didn't correlate together. You think he'd be great at both.
right, because like when I'm watching a fight that DC's commentating, like when he's talking about the wrestling, like he's given things that unless you're really into that world like he is, like of course most of the commentators are former fighters, like you have Bisping, you have Paul Felder, like people
Mhm.
like that. But DC's knowledge about wrestling, like it allows it to translate to people like me who know basically nothing about it. And he's talking about what this is, what's happening, these transitions, and how that wrestling base is making that possible.
Here's a question I got for you, and then I'll get back to a little bit of who's number one for you and the fans. But so when a fighter in the UFC bumps up, I don't even know. I'm sure the statistics are a little varied, but when a fighter like bumps up, so say a middleweight goes up to what's the weight class above
Light
middleweight?
heavyweight.
Light heavyweight.
Mhm.
The light heavyweight's got to be the huge favorite, right? And would you say the person who's bigger normally wins those like super matches or whatever you want to call them?
So where you see the main difference is if people try to go down a weight class, you'll see like a reduction in their chin. You know, they could get knocked out easier because
Yeah,
they're
I
cutting
feel like
more
they don't have
weight.
as much power either, right?
Right.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, they're like you have somebody like Alex Pereira who was only cutting to middleweight so he could fight Israel Adesanya. He's not a
Okay.
middleweight. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, he's the current light heavyweight champion. So, and you saw the what happened with Pereira when he lost to Izzy in the rematch. I mean, he got knocked unconscious. He got starched, and it has to have something to do with that massive weight cut. I mean, I
Mhm.
forget what he walks around at, but it has to be over 205. So if he's walking around at 215, again,
What's
I'm making that
middleweight?
185.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's
So
quite a
he's
cut.
cutting a
Even with
massive amount of
24
weight.
hours.
Yeah.
And those
So,
guys get over 24 because they're the main.
mm,
It goes 24 off of, I'm guessing, like when the card starts. Like, so they get way over 24.
yeah. Yeah, and the thing about champion fights is if it's a championship fight, you have to make the weight class limit of 185 or whatever the weight class
Yeah.
is. But any other non-title fight, you have a 1 pound allowance. So
Oh, wow. I feel
normal
like more
middleweight.
people miss those, which is like embarrassing, honestly. Like,
I wanted to ask that to you as well because in MMA, when people miss weight, it's like a horrible sin. Like if you miss
that's
weight,
definitely the wrestling side of it, like,
okay,
without a
like
doubt.
that is that this like the same deal? Like it's almost like well, I shouldn't say almost. It's disrespectful to your opponent to miss weight.
I get it's more like from my world, I think it's more disrespectful because we have a lot more tournaments and dual meets and stuff, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
this next man up. So it's not a lot of cards, like I said. It's like who's number one's the only thing we have super relatable. Um, but it's almost more disrespectful, I guess. I don't want to say to yourself, but more your team because you
Mm-hmm.
put all this effort in college, there's 10 weight classes, so nine other dudes had the discipline to make the weight and go out and perform for the team,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're out there missing weight. And to be honest, most of the time, this is an easy or hard to guess, but most of the time, if you're the guy missing weight, you're probably just such a problem in other
Mm-hmm.
areas as well
Right.
to to where it's not just because it was too much, just probably weren't disciplined enough. I'd probably say 1% of dudes who have missed weight all time, it was because it just wasn't the right fit. Like, I think
Right.
it's more likely to see someone make the weight and just not be that great at
Mm-hmm.
production wise than to miss weight because it just was too much. Like, I feel like everyone can make a certain weight. It's just the production after that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I guess back to who's number one and why I kind of asked that question. There were obviously the two 1v1s, but there were three, yeah, I believe three matches where someone bumped up. And obviously these are high school kids, so they're growing and everything, but they intentionally bumped up just to get a better match. And
Mm-hmm.
all three of the lighter dudes won, which was
Oh, okay.
crazy. D Lockett bumped up. He's a junior, so under 20-year-old silver medalist, and he bumped up and wrestled a Fargo champion, which Fargo is like the freestyle, the Olympic style nationals. He bumped up and his match was really great. He looked super slick and took out Burton, who's the number one at 165. I'd imagine Lockett's probably going to bump up and stay there. And then heck, I mean, they might have battles in college too, that's why I like high school wrestling so much, just picturing their futures and seeing how it's going to
Mm-hmm.
develop in like a college scene. Um, and then this one kid from Nebraska, his last name's Ziola. Um, and he got beat up pretty bad by the dude he was going to wrestle, but that dude got hurt. So then another Fargo champion decided to wrestle him, and they did like a catch weight, which I thought was really cool at
Mm-hmm.
200 pounds. So they battled it out. That wasn't for the number one spot, but it was just really cool between an Ironman champion, which is another huge national tournament, and then a Fargo champion. And then the other number one, these guys were chipping. They're both. So imagine this. Imagine you and me are the same weight and we're both committed to Michigan. So obviously there's going to be a logjam, like who's going to be the starter.
Mm-hmm.
So for the heavyweight match, it was a 215 number one versus the heavyweight number one and the 215 one. And he was just, dude, he was all over this dude. It was a really good match for him, Drew Correa over Sahakian. Sahakian might be a DC dude too, but I'm not sure. I just know he's from California. But it was just really incredible. I don't remember the last time I've seen this many number ones. And then last thing I'll mention is this kid named Jaden James. I think he's only a sophomore or junior potentially. He's committed to Virginia Tech, but he won a three-man bracket and beat two Pennsylvania state champs. So this way, they couldn't pick the top two. This way, they never really wrestled that much before, and it was so deep that they had to do like a three-man bracket for it. So Jaden James beat this guy named Guy from, I believe, Quakertown, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Beat him and then beat another dude for the number one spot, both from Pennsylvania. So a little blunder on our home state. But that dude, I thought he was the most impressive. Maybe it was because he had more matches than everyone, but he was really impressive. Bo Bassett was really awesome. D Lockett always looks great, but from a there's those, I'm sure in fighting too, there's those guys that always look amazing. You're kind of used to them always being great. Like Prime
Mm-hmm.
McGregor, I'm sure was like this, is what I can relate to. But there's something about those unknown guys who are that good, but people don't know about them yet. I'm
Yeah.
sure you probably are a little bit more you watch Contender series and everything. I'm sure some people have no idea who they are, but just seeing those dudes go out there and perform, people probably make them a bigger deal than the people who always look really, really good, is what I think. That's kind of how I saw Jaden James. He's probably always been really good, but
Mm-hmm.
just the unknown factor made him pop even more than everybody else.
Yeah, you have a lot of fighters like that that come out of nowhere. Well, nowhere as in nowhere that the masses are watching them.
Oh yeah.
MMA fans, if you're really into the sport and you're following like these people's careers, you can see the cream rise to the top. You could see what guys in their performances prior to the UFC, their Contender Series performance, some of their earlier performances in the UFC. You're like, this guy's going to be special. I
Oh,
mentioned
yep.
last week Peyton Talbot. He was one guy, even his interview with Laura Sanko on the Contender Series, you're seeing this guy, you're like, she even commented on it. He's so cerebral. He just looks like he knows what he's doing. He has this level of confidence to him that just seems unbreakable and backs it up with incredible octagon performances. And as soon as I saw his performance on the Contender Series, the rest of his performances in the UFC, which have all been finishes, came as pretty much no surprise. You're like, this guy is the real deal.
But dude, that's crazy you mentioned like you being so into Contender series, you kind of see the cream rise to the top. So one thing I did over the past couple years, mostly because of the YouTube stuff, but so there's worlds, obviously. That's like the big thing for wrestling is the Olympics and worlds and everything like that. And when I was younger, I used to just obviously root for USA and watch them at these world championships. And USA was kind of down when I was coming up. And I was like, man, who are these dudes they're losing to? Like, obviously, I know Russia's good, but we're losing to these other countries like Azerbaijan or Uzbekistan, just Iran. And I would have no
Mm,
idea who they are. So over the past 3, 4 years, very similar to your UFC kind of watching days, I just started watching a lot of these international tournaments, keeping track of a lot of results. And now it's just kind of crazy because when I watch an event, I don't just have USA. There's sometimes I'm more interested in other like foreign wrestlers because
Hmm.
I know they're just like legendary status and really good. So it's really fun just to see. I mean, I've even made videos to help educate people because watching Worlds is fun, especially when a USA guy wins it and does really good, or the same with the Olympics. Obviously, you know them, but it's just so much more fun if you're like, oh, this USA guy is going up against this Japan dude who's a two-time silver medalist or something like that. So, do you ever see something like that on an undercard where you've been following a guy for a while and you're like, oh, this is his chance? Or were you following Sean O'Malley? He was kind of like that, wasn't he? He got a lot of like lower fights at first. I felt like every card I watched, like a big card I watched, he was on
Hmm.
that card. I was like, man, this dude's gonna be big. He just fits the part.
Yeah, I did not catch his Contender series because he was one of the early Contender series stars. That was before I
When you
watched.
say early, you mean like they just started it, like
Yeah,
season one kind of
I
stuff?
think now I could be wrong here, but I think he was on season one,
Okay.
and so that
It's
was
so
that was
fitting. Dude, you look
yeah.
at him and you're just like, oh, that's so fitting.
And there's been that conversation recently, especially before the last pay per view. The question is he the superstar that he says that he is? Is he the superstar that the UFC wants him to be? And of course, you're going to get the Connor comparisons. Anytime the word superstar is thrown around
Yep.
in the MMA world,
Yeah.
you have that as the standard. That's
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's pretty hard to live up to. But the thing is, Sean O'Malley is a superstar because I hear people who don't watch MMA, don't know the first thing about MMA, think that the sport itself is called UFC. Those kind of people
It's its own
know.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just its own thing.
UFC is the promotion, MMA is the sport.
Yeah.
But so those kind of people know who Sean O'Malley is. And if you have people that you wouldn't even consider casual fans of the sport, people who aren't fans of the
Dude, that is
sport
such
at
a
all.
great way of like that is actually such a great way of breaking that down. Like
Right.
that
So
he's a superstar. Yeah.
yeah, so now again, has he reached Connor status? No, of course not.
Do you think that'll
Connor's
ever be
Connor.
reached? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
You
do.
do?
I
Okay.
because Connor did it in an era where it was primed to do it. Like all the stars aligned to make Connor what Connor is. And I think as the sport grows, you're going to have the chance to. I mean, and it takes a lot of marketing on the side of the UFC. It's a lot of things have to go right. But I think it's only a matter of time before you have that level of stardom because Connor's days are, they're numbered now in the sport. It's this Michael Chandler, and Michael Chandler's not even fighting him anymore. So you've had that fight get dragged out for so long. Now it's not happening. I feel bad for Chandler. But
Yeah, for real.
so
I
it's
mean,
like when Connor steps back in, nobody knows what's going to happen. He could lose again. And if he does win, how many more fights does he have to capitalize on this? And of course, he never has to put on a pair of gloves again. He's set for the rest of his life. But for the entertainment factor, I do think that we're going to see Connor fight again. But you're gonna need another star. And a lot of people say that the UFC is trying to manufacture Sean O'Malley into that. Yeah, no
no.
shit. That's how they
Yeah.
make their money. But it's
I
like,
think he backs it up in other ways too.
of course, yeah, yeah. And but I think there's gonna need to be a lot of things to go right to get that Connor star again. But I think it's more than possible. I think we're gonna see it within the next 5 years. Maybe not somebody reach that level, but somebody who is on that trajectory start to get their name in everybody's mouth.
I was listening to Dana White on something and he was just saying how Sean O'Malley gives him a lot of those McGregor vibes. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't like I don't like doing the LeBron to Jordan thing with some people because that can piss some people off.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean it is true. Things like that. Um, but Dana White was saying he's kind of got it just from talking with them, and he just says he can tell right away if bad dudes are just they're just bad dudes, and it's on them to kind of market them so people like them, or if they're a heel, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also people who you can just tell they got it, and he said Sean O'Malley's definitely got it. And then another point you said, dude, I don't know if McGregor's gonna do it. I think he's just. I know he wants to, but I didn't the last fight get stopped because he like hurt his toe or
He
something,
broke his leg.
broke his leg again.
Yeah.
See, dude, that's the thing. That's been the hold up the past couple years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you ever seen him fight?
Yeah. I watched him
Poirier
fight.
2? Was that the last one?
Well, Poirier 2 and 3 because The
Oh
first time they
wow, I didn't
fought,
even
yeah,
realize there was a three. I
I
missed
didn't watch the
three.
first one. That was before I watched. But then when the rematch came
Oh wait,
around,
yeah, that one was a while. Like their first
yeah.
fight, yeah, Poirier was really he wasn't really the star he is now. Yeah, okay.
So then when you watch the second fight, I know Connor looked good in the beginning, but then ended up getting I think that was a knockout, right? Yeah, that
Yeah, I
was
think he
yeah,
knocked him
yeah,
out, then he got knocked out,
yeah.
or something.
And then in the third fight, you have the leg break, which goes down as a TKO. So Poirier technically knocked him out twice. But but yeah, I think Connor, if anything, we're gonna get one more out of him. Because
Okay.
I don't think somebody like that is gonna go out on a broken leg.
Yeah,
I
dude.
don't know who they're gonna match him up against, but I mean, I
Yeah,
thought Chandler would have been a good matchup, but not happening. So
yeah,
I guess we'll
for
see.
a long, long time. For someone like me, I mean, you said people who don't even know UFC isn't the sport. And I'm a little above that tier, I guess. But I knew who Conor McGregor was. Like when he lost
Mm,
to Diaz, right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yep.
I knew about it and I didn't even
Mm,
watch the fight, but I knew it was crazy and I knew there was going to be a Diaz and McGregor too, and it was really huge. Um, so someone like me, like I know McGregor and then I also know Sean O'Malley, so they're definitely
mm,
superstars. But I think my ship sailed for a couple years. I just wanted to see a signature McGregor like comes out, knocks the dude out like with something crazy powerful.
mm.
Like just because I never really got to see that. And I guess neither
Right.
neither did you really. A lot of people missed it that are huge fans now. And I just wanted to see it one more time, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if we're gonna get it. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. The win is going to be the hard part. I think like there's going to be that time. It's going to be a lot of build up, and I think the UFC, Dana, Connor, I think they all know that if they put one more fight together, it's going to be big. And I mean, it
Oh
has to be
yeah,
big.
yeah. I mean, if
So
I was in Dana White's shoes, I'd be like, I got to get this dude to fight, and it's got to be right. It's
yeah,
almost hard not to make it right. I feel like that dude just he could
y-
be out of the UFC for 10 years and come back and he could be the face again for that one night. It's kind of like a Tyson. I mean, Tyson still can
hmm
do that with some things.
yeah.
Um, dude, speaking of knockouts, I gotta bring this up before I forget. Is it Ziam? He fought this
Oh,
weekend.
fair. Yeah, Ferris ZM.
Dude,
I
how
don't know
about
how to
that
pronounce his first
knockout?
name
I
right.
saw that all over social media. Dude, that looked like something you do in a video game.
Yeah, I mean the mouthpiece went flying, and Matt Frivola, he he has been on the receiving end of some highlight reel knockouts, but he's a
Oh,
great fighter.
yeah.
He's a great
I
fighter.
mean,
I mean
clearly, yeah.
he
Yeah, on that
trains with
card.
two champions. You have former champion Aljamain Sterling, current champion Merab Dvalishvili. He trains with some real killers. So I mean he is the real deal. He's a good fighter, but watching that was one of the most brutal knockouts I've ever seen in my
Bro, it
life. I
was
mean, when you have
nasty.
the grabbing the head, knee to the chin, mouthpiece goes flying, slumped, starched. Yeah, that was a rough watch, but
Do you think that dude was just that like tired? Because I feel like you shouldn't be able to just grab someone and then just pop them right up. Like those dudes are strong enough, or what? You think he
I
just
mean
caught him?
it could happen. You have some fighters that could head kick somebody from the clinch. I forget who it was. It wasn't too long ago where I'm watching this guy in the clinch with somebody and he's like moving his leg and like kicking him in the head. I'm like, how is that
Mm.
even humanly possible? But one of the craziest finishes on the card, I don't know if you saw it, it was the first fight of the night. It was Chris Duncan. I can't remember who he was fighting, but Bisping called it a ghost guillotine.
What?
And when I heard it, I heard that I'm like, I'm watching it. He has him in a guillotine,
That sounds
and
like a
it's
new
tight.
energy drink.
Oh, the ghost
Go
guillotine.
Ghost
Yeah.
Guillotine flavor exclusively at Halloween Walmart.
You have to check out this clip because it's one of the wildest finishes I've ever seen. He has him in the guillotine. He's on his back. He has him in the guillotine, and he lets go of it and is about to go punch him. The guy's laying on top of him. He lets go of the guillotine, and he's signaling to the ref. He's out. He's unconscious. After he let go of the guillotine, the guy went totally unconscious. So it was like
What?
he finished the guillotine after he let it go. So they said the ghost did it. So there might have been the first ever ghost guillotine in UFC history. Shout out
Man.
Chris Duncan. the
Man,
problem.
what do you think he was doing in the locker room? You think he was bringing spirits in with him?
He might. Well, hey, that they claim that that Poetan Alex Pereira that he was the reason he beat Yuri the first time was because of spirits. Yuri said no more spirits this fight.
Wait,
Poetan said
what?
that was a real
Wait,
thing. Yeah.
wait. That was a legitimate quote he said to someone.
Yeah, well, now that wasn't a verbatim quote, but yes, Yuri
He basically
Prohaska,
said that.
he said, "Yeah, no spirits this fight. Won it fair and square." Well, he got knocked out again.
Who was your favorite? You texted me. Who was your favorite middleweight again that fought this weekend?
Brendan Allen, yeah, one of my favorite fighters at middleweight. He lost, and you know it was a rough watch because there were a lot of times, and the commentators were saying it too. He could have had so much success on the feet, but he kept shooting for takedowns, and it was so frustrating to
Does he have a
watch because
wrestling background or no?
I mean, he's known for the rear naked choke. So I mean, I don't know too much about if he has any like collegiate or like high school wrestling experience, but
Yeah,
he is known for his ground game, and he's like the rear naked choke master. So it is in his best interest to get it on the ground. But
yeah.
he was having success on the feet and just kept shooting these takedowns that were just stalling the fight, and it
Was
just
his
didn't.
dude a Russian who he fought?
Yeah, so the Nasruddin Imavov, he's from Dagestan, but he lives in
Oh,
France. Like
dude, he
he
should not. Whoever did his game plan was not. Oh, he lives in France.
yeah,
Oh, we could
yeah.
get into a whole. So I learned this the other day. So we can get back to this in a second, but so that just goes back to me doing so much research on foreigners. I'm starting to. A geography teacher once said that I know how to say countries really well, and I'm just like, well, I hear them on UFC cards or wrestling tournaments, so that's how I know that. But well, I can like look at last names and be like, oh, they're probably from, but like I could tell that dude was Russian by
hmm
his last name. But I guess a while ago, so a lot of French wrestlers have like Russian last names. And right now, a thing that's going on is if you're not the starter, because they only for Worlds and Olympics, it's only the top person. So
hmm
like USA, a lot of good wrestlers go to wrestle for Puerto Rico or a few
Mm.
people. This one dude is San Marino. It's a country. He wrestles for there because his grandma's from there or something
Oh,
along those
okay.
lines. Um, it's just things like that. Plus our process is pretty thorough to get the best guy. And if you can go to a country and they're like, yeah, you can have the spot and you still get to train America, it's like the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So a lot of them do that. But for a while, I thought a lot of French or Russians who couldn't start were just transferring to France. But
Mm.
I guess there was like a big, and I don't want to paraphrase something like this, but I guess they got a lot of refugees a couple
hmm
years ago, and that's why a lot of or Russian last names are wrestling for France. They actually live there and train there, but parts of Russia they moved to France because of some war or something like that. I could be way off on that. If someone in the comments wants to help me on that,
We might need
let me
some
know.
geographical help because
Yeah, I
I have
know.
no idea.
I'll have to look into that and bring it back. But for a while, I thought there was a lot of Russian transfers to France, but they actually do live there, which is neither here nor there. But so he was a Dagestan guy and then moved to France.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know any of the specifics of his journey, but I know he's from Dagestan and at some point moved to France and represents France. Like if you see his name
Alex says
has a French
France.
flag next to it.
Yeah, shooting against the dude. Dagestan could be their own like country and dominate.
Yeah.
Like if you had Dagestan versus the rest of Russia, Dagestan would probably dominate in like a dual meet.
hmm
Most of Russia's best guys are from Dagestan. So that's interesting. Allen decided to do that for
Yeah,
sure.
and it just it felt so frustrating, and you know it happens because again I'm not in the octagon. I don't know how he's feeling, but
Yeah,
you'll see like if a fighter's tired, they'll shoot what's called desperation takedowns. Like I just need a break.
just
I
to
need to
hold
like
on.
right, yeah, and you know after a while, it just every single takedown it just kept getting more and more frustrating because you saw him have that success on the feet, and you know who knows what would have happened, but you know it's a setback. But I think Brendan Allen is that type of guy. He has the skill set where he could beat any middleweight like in the
Hmm.
UFC. I think he has the capability to do that. Uh, but you know, just a setback. Nasruddin Imavov's the real deal. I mean, his last fight against
I mean, yeah, they were both the co-mains, so they both got something for them.
yeah, yeah, Nasruddin Imavov's fight against Jared Cannonier. I thought it was an early stoppage, and I don't usually call those, like, there are some fights that people call an early stoppage. I'm like, that wasn't going in a good direction, and I think that ref just saved that guy from unnecessary punishment.
Yeah.
But the main event was, it had kind of a wacky ending. So the first round, uh Renato Moicano is fighting Benoit Saint Denis. So Benoit Saint Denis, former French special forces. Renato Moicano, he's from Brazil.
Man, French showing out.
Yeah, yeah. The French fighters went 6-3 on the night.
Oh
So
wow.
so a decent turnout for the French crowd.
Do they have a big presence in the UFC?
Well, the card was in France, so they tried to like stack a lot of, and
Oh,
yeah, there are
oh,
a lot of French fighters in the
yeah.
UFC, but
I
yeah,
mean, yeah, it could be in France, but they still need to. That's just curious because, like I said, besides the Russian guys who moved to France, France doesn't have the huge, like the biggest wrestling
right.
showing. But continue.
So the main event was pretty wacky because in the first round, I scored it a 10-8 for Hanato Moicano. Now, are you familiar with MMA scoring and how it
Dude,
works?
this could be a better transition. You said something a little bit ago, and then you said something on the last podcast. How does scoring work? When you said you scored the fight last podcast, I wanted to ask, but we just started talking about something else. How does scoring work in the UFC? Because I'm obviously it's a mix of several different sports that all have very different
Yeah.
scoring, but I know it's like the card looks like a boxing card. I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that,
So
but yeah.
it's scored like boxing. So the way it works is whoever won the round gets 10 points.
Mhm.
And if you lost the round, but you put up a fight, like you fought, if you
Yeah.
fought your guy, you'll get 9 points if you
Mhm.
lost. So the winner gets 10, loser gets nine. Now, if it's complete domination, like there's nothing, you just took them down, you're beating them up, they're not getting any
10-8.
shots on you. Yeah, 10-8. And then there is the possibility, and I think I've seen it one time. Uh, I think Ilya Taporia, the guy we brought up on the last pod, he, I believe, scored a 10-7 against Josh Emmett.
Is that just if
So
you really kill him, or is that with a
it's
penalty
like
point?
pure, no, yeah, I mean, you could get a 10-7 if a guy gets a point taken away and the fight was, or the round was scored at 10-8, but you could
Yeah.
just earn a flat 10-7 if you get completely dominated and pummeled. And there was an argument, or I think Bisping was the one who said it, that said that that first round could have been a 10-7 for Hanato Moicano. I scored it a
Oh
10-8
wow.
because, you can't really hand out 10-7s like they're
Yeah,
free, but
I feel that's such a like weird. Yeah,
yeah.
I get what you're saying.
But then the second round, Benoit Saint Denis, I thought won the round. But
Hmm.
something that the wacky part came in. So even though Hanato Moicano dominated the first, Benoit Saint Denis won the second round, they stopped the fight after the second round, before the third round even
Yeah, I
started.
was gonna say
Because
I see the result here, so I'm
yeah,
curious where this is going.
so Saint Denis' eyes were so messed up that the doctor advised the ref to stop the fight, and it did,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, he did. So even though Benoit Saint Denis won that second round, the damage he took from the first and second round from Moicano was enough to get the doctor to stop the fight.
Oh wow, that's crazy, dude. Did you watch the fight where that girl's head was like split like a watermelon?
Oh yeah, yeah. Who was that? Irene Aldana?
I think so.
Yeah,
It really wasn't
yeah,
that long ago.
yeah,
Probably
yeah,
like
yeah.
right before we did our first recording, like
Yeah,
right
that
before
was
it.
that was one of the most brutal, because I'm seeing the, you see it live, but then you're seeing like the Instagram clips
Oh
afterwards, and you're
yeah.
seeing them like open it up. I'm like, Jesus, it did look like a split watermelon.
Do you think fighters target that, like spots that open up a lot, or
I think there are just some fighters that have taken that damage that, once they get back in there, there's about to be blood, with a few
yeah?
good shots. And,
Is
like
there
we
a
talked,
blood rule? Like if there's too much blood, can they stop it?
yes and no. If a fighter's bleeding so bad that it's like they can't see out of their eyes,
Yeah.
then that might be cause for a stoppage. But if they're just bleeding on the ground, they're not gonna stop the fight mid round because somebody's bleeding. It would
Okay.
be something like happened in the main event where in the corner the doctor looks at them and they're like, they can't continue.
Okay. Sweet. So before we move on, is there anything else from this weekend that you kind of wanted to highlight from? Did this UFC even have a number? Oh no, it was
No, no, it
just
was just a fight night.
okay.
Yeah, the only other thing that I thought was, well, I guess two things. We'll start with the I guess it's not really bad news, but it's just something that you don't like to see. There was a split decision that went the wrong way. And this has been like a common occurrence I've seen. There have been some gnarly scorecards there. So before I get ahead of myself, what happened on the card was one of the French fighters, William Gomis, fought Joe Anderson Brito,
Mhm.
and Gomis lost the fight. At least the fight that I watched, he lost.
Yeah.
But on the judges' scorecards, he got two judges to swing it his way. Now
Oh,
you'll
French
have,
politics, dude.
yeah, I mean, you hate to say that, but
Yeah.
it could be a real thing. And it's been happening often enough that you now start to worry if
Wait,
that's gonna.
seriously, you think like out of like five fights, three of them might have like a bad split decision?
Oh, no, it's not that common, but it happens often enough that every card you're like, especially if the
Is it
fight
gonna
was
happen?
close, yeah, you're like, is a judge gonna really screw this guy? And it was so bad that the other fight, I think it was Tai Tuivasa, whoever Tai Tuivasa fought in his last fight. So it happened with Tai Tuivasa just a few months ago when he fought Jairzinho Rosenstrike. Jairzinho Rosenstrike won the fight, but one judge, and he won at 30-27. Like, he won all three rounds. One judge scored it 30-27 for Tai Tuivasa, which was so egregious
Wait, yeah,
that
that means he wait,
he
that means
thought.
one round would have been like really bad, right? Like he
Well, no,
got
that means he. So if a judge scores at 30-27 for a fighter, that means that fighter won all three rounds. So they got 10 points
oh yeah,
for
yeah,
three rounds, and the other fighter got 9 points for
yeah,
three
yep,
rounds,
that
making
adds
it
up. Yeah.
27. So the problem was Jairzinho Rosenstrike won every round, and one judge gave all three rounds to Tai Tuivasa, which was so bad that he was supposed to judge another fight and he got pulled. And he'll likely never judge a fight in the UFC
Oh
again because it
wow.
was that bad. I mean, if you were watching the fight and you could know nothing, you could be like, yeah, that guy was beating that guy the whole time. It was so, but yeah, so it's become a problem. It happened. You know what? Funny enough, I think it did happen twice on a card where it may have not went the fighter who shouldn't have one's way, but one judge scored it for them. Like, it was a split decision when it shouldn't have been a split decision. So yeah, that's something that's been a little bit worrisome recently.
Well, I mean, that's one thing with just Dana White and the UFC. They are like their own thing. I know some organizations have so many people that look over something, so it's good that when someone I mean, it's not good the job security wise, but it's good like if you're not doing your job or if there's some corruption, you could kind of just get rid of that
Mm,
person and
right.
move on to the next. Um, dude, did you hear about the really good boxer Floyd Mayweather? I guess he was doing an exhibition fight a couple years ago, and the ref was so bad that he just kicked him out. Like he switched refs mid-fight because he
Oh,
only
no, I
does these
didn't.
exhibitions, so
Yeah.
he has all control.
Right.
I'll
Yeah.
have to fact check that, but I heard he just kicked a ref out and then they got a new one mid-fight or
Jeez.
mid-boxing match. But anything else you want to highlight from the fight night?
Yeah, last thing I gotta say is Brian Battle is a beast. He proved it again. He was the Ultimate Fighter winner. I don't know what season. I don't watch the Ultimate Fighter. I know I should, but I don't.
How is
I
that
I try.
different from that's like the reality show, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and
That's
I
still
like.
going?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
oh wow, I thought they were done with that.
I like the concept of it. Like, I like that it exists.
Yeah.
It's just not something that I could sit down and watch. And with how big of a fight fan I am, it's kind of surprising to
Yeah.
me. Like, it surprises me that I'm not
Yeah.
interested in it. But every time the finale comes around, like, I'm interested to see like who's gonna win because they fight the finale on a card, so it's like a real
Oh, that's
UFC fight.
cool. Oh,
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah. So Brian Battle, I got to watch him win his Ultimate Fighter finale, and then he only has one loss in the UFC to Renat Fakhretdinov, who is another monster. He's fighting Nursultan Ruzaboyev. We're really
Hmm.
mixing up the names here, but he's fighting him next. But his only loss being to him, he's a top tier guy in terms of like rising talent. But Brian Battle got another, I think it was a standing TKO against a French guy, Giuseppe, and he did exactly what you want the heel to do: beat the French guy on his home soil, flipped off the crowd,
Oh my
embraced the
God.
booze, and then said, "You really thought I was going to lose to a French dude?"
Oh, that's savage as
So
fuck.
it was, yeah. So he turned completely heel this fight, which entertainment wise, I like to see. You like the good guys, you like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, you like the guy that everybody likes to root for. But when you see a guy who could back up the shit talk, turn heel, it's like, all right, this is about to get exciting.
Oh yeah. Who won or I guess two questions. Dana White only gives out one bonus, right? Or can multiple people get a bonus?
So only one fight of the night bonus,
Fight
which
of the
is,
night. That's what I'm
yeah.
talking
So
about.
both fighters get 50K if they earn fight of the night. But then there's also
Oh, all right.
performance bonuses. So if you get a really nice finish, now it's not just you get a finish, you get a bonus. If you get a nice finish and you
Yeah.
really impressed, then you'll get a performance of the night bonus. And those he can hand out as many as he wants. There's sometimes three, sometimes four. This one fight card, every fight was so sick that every finish got a bonus.
Oh wow. Who won fight of the night?
There was no fight of the night bonus. It was just four performance bonuses. It was the guy I mentioned previously with the ghost guillotine, Chris
Hmm.
Duncan. He got one. Ferris CM, the guy that you brought up, he got
Yeah.
a bonus. Brian Battle with
Brian
the
Battle.
with the standing
Yeah.
TKO, and then Morgan Share, the last pirate. I know I don't know it's like a French last name. It's like Charrier. I don't know how to say it, but those four guys got performance bonuses. No fight of the night bonus handed out.
Why do you think that is? Just I see there's a lot of knockouts, so I mean maybe that's why.
Yeah. So I mean, if you just sometimes you just don't have that fight that stands out. No, I should say normally there's always a fight that stands out as like that was fight of the night. But yeah, I could see that other than the ones that ended in spectacular fashion in terms of a finish, there wasn't really that two-sided war that really earned that fight of the night. So I could see them skipping out on that bonus. But yeah, I think the four guys that got them, they all were well deserved.
Dana White's saving some money, dude. Maybe he
Yeah,
was out gambling too long,
yeah,
out gambling for a while in France. So what are you excited for Contender series coming up? I know you said there's a wrestler on it, dude.
yes. So first off, we are getting the return of the Punisher, Torres Finney, who probably has one of the craziest frames you've ever seen. His arms look longer than should be humanly possible. But this is going to be his third time returning to the Contender Series, and he won his previous two fights, but just didn't get a contract. Didn't impress enough
Ooh,
to earn a
Torres with a
contract.
Z. Oh,
Yes.
oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
you see this guy?
Oh, oh
It's like
my
I
gosh,
didn't even
dude.
know they make them that way.
What? Hold on. Can I should be able to is this up
Yeah,
on your
there. That's
screen?
him. Yeah, it is.
There we
That is
go.
him. Yeah. So he
Yo, look at
Torres Finney is coming back for the third time. So hopefully,
oh
third time's the
wow.
charm. Hopefully, he could get that contract. I'd like to see him in the UFC.
How's this stuff gone before? Like, is he one just not impressive, or is he?
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
he's won both fights. I forget. I know the last one went to a decision. I forget if he did anything, if he finished in the first fight that he had on Contender. But uh, Dana said that he just didn't impress. And then in his time off between his first and second appearance, he only had one fight. And he said he would have liked to see him get more experience outside, not just take one fight. But they're bringing him back for the second time this season, so I think they know that he does have the potential. Yes. Like he's a middleweight. I don't know how tall he is exactly, but he is a middleweight.
dude, sometimes I learned this through wrestling. Like sometimes like I was a little short, like I'm short obviously. But I was pretty stocky and muscular like during my time of competing. And there were some dudes who like weren't as muscular in my weight, but like taller. And I slowly
Mm,
realized sometimes, dude, just a two, obviously the picture we showed was a pretty dramatic, but like sometimes just those 2 inches make just a huge difference in what you can make healthy and perform and
mm,
whatnot. But then you also don't factor in like I was short and stocky, so my arms weren't as long. But then those dudes with the long reach in my
right.
world can get to your legs, but in this world might have more power
Mm-hmm.
with the physics and everything. So that's one thing that I always thought was weird is sometimes just those couple inches make the biggest difference with weight, which you wouldn't even
Mhm.
think about it.
Yeah, so the wrestler that you brought up, that's going to be fighting tomorrow, recording this Monday, Jacoby Smith out of Oklahoma State. He's currently
Yeah.
8-0. He has a undefeated 8-0 record in MMA. So, and whenever you see guys like this, you always love seeing undefeated fighters on the Contender Series because it's like they're putting their shiny undefeated record on the line to try to get a contract to get to the UFC. So it's like those perfect moments. And you see a lot of undefeated fighters on Contender because a lot of them are early in their career.
Yeah.
And if they have that edge on some of the fighters that they're going to be fighting at that level of competition, you might see them plow through people, but they get to the Contender Series, they're fighting the best unsigned talent. The best fighters that aren't in the UFC are either fighting in another major promotion or they're fighting on the Contender Series to
Mm.
get into the UFC. So I'm excited to see what Jacoby Smith could do. Did you have any you hear about him
Oh yeah.
before this?
Yeah, I remember watching him. So he wrestled at Oklahoma State. I think he had 2 years. I got to watch him for 2 years when I was in college. So he was 2 years ahead of me, or 3 years, whatever it would have been. Yeah, he was an All-American. He started out JUCO, so was at his school and then transferred into Oklahoma State. But he was always a starter, 2 or 3 time national qualifier, All-American. Um, when you just look at this dude, I don't know. I saw what he fights at, which is not what he wrestled at. I think it's like maybe 10 pounds lighter than what he was at in college.
Mm,
But this dude is just a tank. Like, I'm really excited. He strikes me as a dude who obviously is going to be a great wrestler. I'm sure that will come into play in this fight. But I could also just see him being pretty mean with his fists. He's just got
mm-hmm,
like tree trunks for arms, dude. I'm excited to see how it goes for him. I hope it goes well.
mm-hmm.
So what's you said put their records on the line in the Contender Series. What's I guess the benefit if you just keep winning and keeping your undefeated record, what you might get into Bellator or maybe get asked to be on a card in UFC if you've proven yourself that much, like a lower card, not the main event card or something like that.
So the zero is the shiniest number in MMA. If you have a zero in the
Oh
loss
yeah.
column, I mean, it just looks so good on a fighter to have a zero in the loss column. So guys who have like single digit fights, like 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, Jacoby
Yeah.
Smith 8-0, you're early in your career. So what you could be doing if you want to get more experience, if you want to have a better record, is putting yourself up. I mean, of course, anytime you step into an octagon, you could lose. But if you have that edge and you think you could beat these guys, I mean, experience benefits everybody. So when you have a fighter with a relatively small record, I mean, only 8 professional fights, you're stepping up into a new level of competition. These aren't the regional guys that you're fighting wherever you're based out of, where you might be the top dog. You're fighting somebody from actually I don't even know, I didn't see who he was fighting or where he's from, but you could be fighting some crazy wrestler from Dagestan. You could be fighting like anybody from across the world, and there could be a massive gap in skill. Doesn't mean you can't win, but it's going to be a lot harder. So what I respect about these fighters, I mean, let's if you're getting the call to be on the Contender Series and you're a martial artist, like you got to take that. I
Yeah.
mean, that is that you have the opportunity to punch your ticket, but a lot goes on the line. I mean, and when you carry that zero, Bisping talked about it before, where when you're undefeated, I mean, you like guard that with your life. Like it's your identity that you haven't lost. And then when you take that loss, I mean, imagine how discouraging that has to be to somebody, but it's all about bouncing back. So that's what I like to see. Like these younger guys on the Contender Series, just put it all on the line. Say this is what I want to do, and this is not the path of least resistance. I'm taking the hardest challenges available to put myself where I want to be.
Yeah, that zero, I mean, it just looks so clean with
It
some
does.
fighters.
So when you have like Ilya Taporia 15-0, I mean, when you have an undefeated champion, I
I
mean,
feel
that
like when you
looks
get in that
really
double
nice.
digits, it's you got to
Oh
be
yeah,
somewhat legit.
yeah.
So do non-professional fight because no normally when these guys start, unless they're like there's some wrestlers right now that have big names from wrestling and they're getting like a pro fight right away, but guys that really don't have big names behind them coming into fighting, do those like unprofessional fights count? I think that's what they're called.
The amateur fights.
Amateur fights. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, do those
So
count on your record or no?
So if you go on somebody's like Topology page or Sherdog page, they'll
Yeah.
have their amateur fights listed, and if you don't have any professional fights, your amateur record is what's listed on your page.
Ah,
But
okay.
towards the record, no, that is a pro record, and any amateur wins or losses do not count towards it.
Ah, okay. Okay. That makes a lot more sense. Here's something I was just playing around with in my head. Of all the different martial arts they combined in the UFC, which one do you think you'd want the most? The striking. Let's even take away striking and kicking are different. So striking, kicking, wrestling, or jujitsu. Which one do you think you want the most?
Well, it's not a secret that everyone says that wrestling is the best space for MMA. It's you'll hear it time and time again, especially when there's like a big wrestler on the card. They'll say wrestling is the best space for MMA. And that's something I wanted to talk to you more about, knowing with like what goes on in a martial arts fight. You could punch, you could kick, you could do all this stuff. Why is it so common that people say that wrestling is the best base for MMA?
I think wrestling just brings the defense that all. I think it defends against all of them. Like jujitsu scares me more than the kicking and the punching,
Mm,
honestly. If I ever would get into an MMA fight or something like that, just because it's a lot different. Like you can go on your back, there's chokes, you can break people's arms. That's a lot of jujitsu stuff.
mm,
Like there's some wrestling positions when I do this, I just think, oh, I would just get choked right out from a guy who's
mm,
really good with jujitsu. So that normally scares me the most. But on the flip side of that coin, I'm also aware of that. Like if I go into fighting, like Ben Askren talked about it, he's like, you just know once the rule set changes, it's not like, oh, it takes forever to realize it. You adapt pretty quickly. So I
mm,
think part of it is wrestlers adapt just because all of the skills are kind of in it. Hand fighting's a small form of punching or striking, stuff like
mm,
that. Kicking isn't super relevant, but it just all leads back to defense. I think if someone's trying to choke you out, you've been in that spot a little bit in wrestling and kind of have the basis behind it. Getting people to the mat, I mean, single legs, taking shots, if that's all from wrestling. So that's probably
mm,
a huge one. And then if someone throws a punch at you, it's just like if someone tries to tie up with you in wrestling, it just comes down from going underneath it, level changing, being able to circle. Circling's a big part of it. If you can create angles, I mean, you probably see that guys who are really good at creating angles to open up their strikes are probably
mm,
killers in the UFC.
yeah.
That's why I used to watch Frankie Edgar back in the day,
Mm.
just because he was so good at creating angles to get to his stuff. So I just think it kind of counters all of them in a way. I don't think if you only know wrestling, I don't think I think it's good to keep evolving your wrestling as UFC fighters, but I also think you need to pour a lot more into the other avenues. Like I think if you just pour 60% of wrestling and then divvy it up between the other ones, you'll start to diminish, in my
Mm.
opinion, at least. Where if you put like already have the wrestling background and then put 20% into the wrestling and then really amp up. I feel like that's what Bo Nickel's doing, to be honest,
Mm.
because he went from never striking to being a crazy good striker so far.
Mm.
So that's just kind of my take on it. I just think it brings the defense to every single avenue of the UFC that everyone else brings in, if that kind of makes sense.
How common is that conversation amongst like top tier wrestlers, like before and after Bo Nickel is really like, I mean, not that he's the first wrestler in the UFC, of course, but he's one of the first like really high level guys, like so high level that they signed him at 3-0.
Yeah.
So like, do you think Bo Nickel's journey to the UFC, do you think this is going to make a lot more NCAA wrestlers want to take that route? And do you think what was there a lot of conversation about that beforehand?
It's just different. I sort of touched on it in the last podcast, but now you can kind of make a living if you're a top level Olympic athlete or world athlete, or even an RTC regional training center, like for example, Penn State Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. You can get paid an all right amount. I mean, Penn's RTC, they have 401ks and benefits and everything. So
Hmm.
some dudes before, I forget who we mentioned last time, but before, if you wanted to stay in the sport and keep making money, you either do coaching, which you have to work your way up in, just like fighting, or you go into fighting. Those are really the only two avenues
Mm,
where now I think a lot of guys are. a lot of wrestlers kind of did like the Bo Nickel route. They wrestled till the next Olympics and then they said, all right, I'm going to go into fighting or I'm going to go into coaching. Like the Bo
Mm-hmm.
Nickel avenue is almost a little bit more unorthodox now, but I'd say 10 years ago it was pretty common where
Oh, okay.
but the thing is, social media is a big thing. NCAAs is more available now to watch. So guys like Bo Nickel get these huge storylines on ESPN heading into the national tournament. So he can jump right in and be a huge name in MMA and then get in the
Mm,
UFC. So I think we're gonna see a swing back again where more people want to fight right away. Maybe do try to get on the world team and then try to get on the Olympic team and be like, all right, I'm gonna go into fighting. Because you don't get any younger either. Some of these
right.
dudes do 2, 3 cycles and then it's too old to start the whole fight train up. But then again, a guy like Jordan Burroughs, who's going on the world team and is 30 something. He's getting up there in age. He probably could get right on a UFC card and fight somebody maybe. But then how long it goes after that, I don't know. But he has a huge name, Olympic gold medalist, things like that.
Mm,
Um, so it just depends. It depends case by case. But I think a lot of it used to just be based on living. If you could make a living off of it, and
right.
obviously UFC, you could easily do that if you get big enough.
Mm-hmm. So the card this weekend on Saturday, there was one fight that I wanted to highlight out of all of them that
This
might
is
slip.
307, right?
Yeah.
Dude, Piera, right?
So
Alex Piera. Dude, I didn't
it.
realize he shaved.
Oh yeah, he shaves the head for the
Dude, he
fights.
looks. I've never seen him with hair, and I saw them shave it, and I was like, he looks like a different person without
Yeah.
hair. I mean, with
Yeah.
hair. I was like, this is bizarre. But sorry, go ahead.
So, that's the main event. That's the one everybody's tuning in to see. And I have seen a little bit of criticism of the depth of this card. Now, again, it's one of those things where, I know every name on the card, so at some level, I'm
Doesn't just make
interested
it
in
that
every
much.
fight.
It makes it
It
that
does,
much better. Yeah.
yeah, because I'm like, oh yeah, this guy, this girl, like that kind of stuff. There's one fight that I wanted to highlight on the main card that I think if you're going to tune in, do not miss this
How
one.
do people watch? Is it a pay-per-view or
Yeah, pay per view,
okay?
ESPN Plus. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, the first fight on the main card, Roman Dolidze versus Kevin Holland. These guys are going to put on a performance. I could not tell you who's going to win, but
Did Kevin Holland
that
have a big knockout or get knocked out in one of his recent fights? I
uh
feel like I've seen this dude before on
so
something.
Kevin Holland absolutely has a gnarly highlight reel. He's knocked out Joaquin Buckley. His knockout over Jacare Souza was one of the most unorthodox, crazy knockouts. Even Rogan was like, "Who knocks somebody out from there?" I don't know if you've seen it, but Kevin Holland's like laying on
Probably.
his back. Jacare Souza's in his guard, and Kevin Holland's talking shit, cracks him while he's kind of
Oh, he's a
distracted.
talker. He's a
Yeah, oh
talker in
yeah,
the ring. Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
yeah. They call him Big Mouth. Yeah. 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 So that is the one fight. It's like you might be tuning in for Pereira and Roundtree, but do not miss that Kevin Holland Roman Dolidze fight. That is a perfect fight to open up a pay per view. The rest of the fights on the main card, I could see casual fans not being that interested in. I get it, but the first and the last fights on the main card, those are going to be the real showstoppers.
How's this Kayla Harrison girl? 17-1.
Yeah,
That's
so she was undefeated in the PFL for a while. I don't know who she lost to, but she lost to somebody in the PFL. And then she signed to the UFC once her contract with PFL was up. She beat Holly Holm pretty soundly, who's a former champion, in the twilight of her career, but a former champion nonetheless. I don't have much to say about the fight other than, she's probably gonna judo throw her and win. Kayla Harrison, she, from what I've seen, because I've watched back some of her PFL
she's
fights.
a big thrower.
Yeah, she was a judo Olympian.
Oh,
I
okay.
think
Yeah,
I
that
think
that adds up.
yeah. So I mean, I don't know like how many medals she won, but I know she was a pretty gnarly judo Olympian, and then in MMA, I mean, she was 16-0, and
Yeah,
then I
she's
think
17
lost.
and 1 now.
Yeah, and then got the win in the UFC, and then now this would be her second fight with the promotion. I think she's somebody who could be a champion in that division. But you gotta fight through those contenders first. So we'll see what happens on Saturday.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. I'm sure it's fun to see people from other leagues, I guess you could say, coming to the UFC because I mean that is just the main promotion. I mean, you have to admit
Hmm.
it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, I've watched some Bellator, and I mean, there's some incredible. I feel like Bellator is a lot more jujitsu guys. That might be different now, but when I watched it, jujitsu was crazy in Bellator. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, the two of the main Bellator signings were, Michael Chandler is one of
Yeah.
them, but recently you have Michael Venom Page joining the UFC. He was a big Bellator star for a while, and he won his promotional debut against Kevin Holland, but then just recently lost to undefeated welterweight prospect Ian Gary, who now I don't know exactly where he's ranked, but he's in somewhere in the middle of the rankings. The welterweight division, if you want to talk about a division that is just breeding these murderers, the welterweight division is what you're looking at. You have Jack Della Maddalena, you have Ian Gary, you have Carlos Prates, you have Shavkat Rakhmonov, who I think is the scariest fighter in the UFC. And, Tom Aspinall is my favorite. I'd be scared standing across from Tom Aspinall. I'd be scared standing across from any fighter in the UFC. It could be
I
a
was about to say,
one.
what percentage of the UFC would you not be scared of?
Yeah, so yeah, I guess not a good benchmark there, but in terms of you're looking at any guy in the UFC, there are two guys that really stand out as scary dudes. Sergey Pavlovich, who Tom Aspinall knocked out, and Shavkat Rakhmonov, who is undefeated and has finished all of his fights. He is a scary guy. So you're talking about divisions that is just stacking up the murders. Welterweight is where you're looking at.
I love our segment where Aspinall just gets brought up. Dude, when he fights again, it is gonna be madness on this
Yes.
podcast.
Yes.
But before we transition to some movie stuff and wrap things up, I just want to coming up in the wrestling world for October. There's U23 Worlds, non-Olympic weight worlds. So for world weights, Josh, they have 10 weight classes, but then for
Mm-hmm.
the Olympics, there's only six for men's freestyle, women's freestyle, and Greco. So what they'll do, the Olympic year, they'll do a world championships with the four weights that didn't get in,
Mm.
which is pretty awesome. If you were an Olympian, you're not allowed to compete, but we still got some awesome people competing. Jordan Burroughs could be retiring. He's could be going for his eighth Olympic or world gold medal, which he already broke the USA record. David Taylor retired and went into coaching at Oklahoma State, and now he came back and made the team. And he could be in a weight class with an Iranian who's like a two-time gold medalist and one of Russia's best wrestlers ever. And then James Green got hip surgery and came back and made the team. So
Oh
this
damn.
the team is it's wild. The team's wild and it's gonna be really exciting. Then U23 is just anyone 23 and under, and there should be some fun storylines there. And a lot of good wrestling in October. Like I said, the start of practices is coming up October 10th, and then before we know it, it'll be November. And isn't there a huge UFC event we're excited for in November?
Yeah.
308.
The
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Bone
three, yep.
or yeah, 308. Well, that's October, basically November, October
Yeah,
26th. But
close enough.
um, but yeah, and so what when this airs, we'll be a couple days into October. What are you starting your October marathon with? What movie we starting with?
So this is still, as of right now, a game time decision.
Josh just watches so many movies, so I just love hearing about them. And for the month of October, well, I'm sure we'll eventually get into it one day, but I'm sure it's a tribute to Monster Madness, which again we could cover that at a different time. But Josh is trying to
Mhm.
watch 31 movies and or watch a movie every single day in the month of October, so 31. But yeah, what are you thinking about starting with? I know you said you were gonna do some trilogies throughout.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I have the It's Alive trilogy. Oh, I mentioned some of those by name the last time, but one of them that is a little bit longer than a trilogy that I know we're going to try to knock out a few of is the Saw.
Oh, dude.
Got the Saw collection. I think there's 8 movies in this.
I
I
think
think
there's more. So there's the
yeah, there's 9
six.
and 10 now. Well, there's Spiral. I don't know if that counts.
Spiral's like in a different, I don't want to say different universe, but I think it takes place somewhere else, like during one of those, you know what I'm saying? Like
Right. Yeah.
takes place in the same universe but at a different time, but none of the similar characters. Dude, I love Saw. Well, let me back up. I love Saw 1 through 6. I really like Saw 3D. I thought was like a big jump the shark kind of movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw Jigsaw, I think, when it came
Mm.
out, and then I don't know. I just wasn't really. That was right around when I started getting out of being really into movies. So I haven't seen any of the new ones. I've seen a lot of reviews and people I watch talk about them, and I hear the two newest ones, maybe just 10 or 9 and 10, are really good. But
I heard I didn't hear anything about 9, but I know I heard 10 was like over the top really good. Like did what the 10th Saw movie should do. Like
yeah,
if you're
dude, it
gonna
blows
make it.
my mind. A series like that. Have you seen any of them? I feel like
I've seen all of them up until whatever the recent the or not, I shouldn't say recent, but I haven't seen 10. I haven't seen 9.
yeah, it
So I
just
think I've
blows my
seen 1
mind
through
with
8.
that series that a series that is so like some of them, if you haven't seen like two like movie 2 movies ago, you're gonna be totally lost. Which
Mm-hmm.
some movies are like you could be kind of lost but pick it up. Where a movie like the Saw series, there's some where it's not even worth watching if you don't know who's this person or why he's doing this and things
Yeah.
like that. So it just blows my mind that they can kind of miss a beat for like 2, 3 movies, and then all of a sudden the next one's the most recent one's really, really good again.
Yeah.
In the eyes of the fans, that's where you really want to hear it from. So that just blows my mind that apparently it was really good when they kind of missed a beat, at least for me, the past couple.
Yeah. So I'm excited because I haven't seen a lot of them in years. I remember they did like a marathon on like IFC or something like a
Yeah, I saw
while
one on
ago.
Sci-Fi, which
Yeah.
is no way to really watch them
Right,
anyway,
right.
but
Yeah, I don't watch movies on TV. I can't do a commercial break. I can't do censorship. Like I got to watch the movie.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, one of the other prospective titles is a movie that I haven't seen before, but just recently came into my possession, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, which you may recognize from somewhere. I don't know where, but you I've had that poster for like 4 years. I've never seen this movie. I just
Really?
recently got it like a few
How'd you
weeks
get the
ago.
poster? You just
I was
gift or
like,
you liked it?
well, we were looking for when we had our apartment. We were looking for like just things to decorate it, and I was going through movie posters, and I'm like,
Oh,
yeah,
that is
that looks
honestly
perfect.
like such a great like
It's
random decoration.
right, yeah, yeah, and it like embodies that like 50s creature feature type sci-fi horror film. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I figured I've had that poster for so long. How do I not own that movie? It didn't sit right with me for years, so I finally righted that wrong.
So that might be the one you're starting with.
Well, I'm looking at this pile here, and I think it's only appropriate that we start with a real stinker. And this is just based on what I've seen. So I bought this Blu-ray and I switched the cover out because they had a dual alt cover because there's 2 movies on here. The alt cover I switched it to is The Visitants.
What
This is
even is that?
I think it's like a bad alien movie. I don't know much about
Do
it.
you think the jukebox is an alien? It looks like the jukebox
Yeah,
plays
it
a.
does. Yeah, I don't I don't know what that's
If the
about, but
jukebox doesn't play a big role, I'm gonna be pissed.
the movie in it is actually Blood Theater, and you can kind of see like the alt cover on the inside. It is Blood Theater, but it came with The Visitants as well.
Wait.
So
So it's Blood Theater and the Visitants.
it's like a
Oh,
double feature, but you can only pick one cover. So
dude,
I thought,
that just reeks of something's off. So
yeah, it's like the throwaway movie that they put in there. So yeah, I think it's 1984. No, 1984 was Blood Theater. The Visitants was 1987. So if I'm looking to start with something real stinky, I think I'm gonna go with that one.
I think that's a good choice. What's
Mm.
got any other options?
Oh, we got a few here. We got this. This is a really cool Vinegar Syndrome slipcover. We have the 11th Commandment, which I didn't know anything about, but this slipcover was just so nice that I'm like, yeah, we're gonna need to add that one.
That movie looks badass. I'll say it.
Yeah, yeah, I gotta.
I
That's
think you gotta watch that on the 11th, October 11th. Honestly,
good eye, good
scratch
eye.
that one from the list.
Yeah, yeah, that's the plan. And then I have so many horror movies. Now these the pile that I had here that I was just going through are more recent acquisitions, but there's so many horror movies on my shelf that I watched like 4 or 5 years ago that I haven't seen since that I'm ready to give a revisit again. So gonna fill in a lot of gaps with those. I think by the time I get like halfway through the month, I'm gonna have like 60 movies that I want to fill in on the October spot,
Oh
but
yeah,
there's
the
only
best feeling.
31 spots. So and I'm going to see the new Joker movie Friday.
Do you like the? I'm guessing you like the first one, right?
Yeah, yeah, big fan. I thought it was a great film. But I am not counting that as a horror film. And for the 31 movie challenge, it has to be 31 horror films. So while I am going to see the Joker in October, does not count towards the project.
Have you ever seen um, you normally like people like you, I'm sure, get asked what are some movies that you have to watch on Halloween? Like, is
Mm.
there any movies like besides the usual suspects of like Halloween or your regular horror movies? What's like a movie during the Halloween season that you just think of? You're like, I gotta watch that.
I'm gonna say so. I'm gonna go kind of in the generic direction, but with a little bit of a twist. So a lot of people's popular Halloween movie would be Halloween
Yeah,
by John
yeah,
Carpenter. So I'm gonna say, while that does get a watch pretty much every October,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
one of the movies that I cannot escape during Halloween time is, even though it's not really like a Halloween movie, is The Thing. It's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Another
The
John
original
Carpenter
or oh,
film.
the John Carpenter one?
Yeah, the John Carpenter
Dude, that is
version.
such a good movie, isn't it? I'll
So
watch that
good.
in like the summer. I just get in the
Yeah,
mood for that
yeah, you
one.
can watch. I mean, yeah, it's a Antarctica movie, but like you watch it in the summertime, it hits. It is one of my all time favorite horror films, and I think it's one of those that you know the coziness of the Halloween season, that aspect of it, and the isolation of the Antarctic research base, I think just goes really well together.
Mm.
And yeah, so that's one of those movies that I always got to watch around Halloween time. I think anything campy, I mentioned Sleepaway Camp the last episode. That's the trilogy that I really look forward to revisiting, because I've seen the first film a bunch of times, but two and three I've only seen once each.
Oh,
So
really?
looking forward to revisiting those again. And I don't know if you know this, but the girl in Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3, that's Pamela Springsteen. That's Bruce Springsteen's sister.
Really? Well, that's a
Yeah,
fun. That's
yeah,
a
right.
good fun fact, really.
Yeah. I thought like for it being like a lower budget, like campy sequel to an already low budget film. I
Yeah,
thought they were pretty. From what I remember, it's been years since I've seen them, but I really enjoyed them. The
yeah,
first film, it takes the cake. It's an all time classic, but I'm glad that 2 and 3 exist.
yeah. Dude, I always think those must have just been the days, like those campy horror movies, like just blowing out sequel after sequel.
Yeah.
Like, dude, like I just feel like making movies, I guess the bar was just lower to an extent. Like you don't have these multi-million-dollar movies, but you also just got movies out so much quicker. I mean,
Hmm.
they weren't like your Academy Award winning films, but it's
Right.
just that campiness is just so much fun looking back
Right.
on it.
And I just watched Friday the 13th Part 2 on Friday the 13th of this year, which I think was this month. Or was it? Was it
This
last
month
month?
or last month, it was
Yeah.
pretty recent.
I mean, that film came out a year after Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th was 80, Part 2 was 81. So like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
said, I mean,
exactly.
that's not a slow turnaround.
Oh,
Like
for
that
movies,
is
that is fast, so
yeah.
fast. Especially since they
Yeah.
didn't know they were gonna make another one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, but when you have that, like, the we mentioned Halloween, that was 79, that set the slasher genre aflame to really like take over in the 80s, where people are like, we need to emulate this.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever seen the movie Haunt?
Haunt.
Yeah, it's I think it was made in 20 it was in 2019. I
No.
actually stumbled across it during COVID when I had the it's like the horror movie streaming service. Um
Shutter.
yeah, I had Shudder and they had the like they had three different channels. It was like slasher horror, supernatural, and there was another one, and it was just on, and I watched it. But it's like a haunted house kind of movie with like a twist, like a little bit of a twist. It's just a quick. I always just think it's a quick little movie. It's a good like modern day horror movie.
Mm,
For some, whenever Halloween rolls around, that's like my hidden gem that I always have to watch. Whatever it's on, I just find it and watch it. So that's kind of
huh.
mine. Like some movies are really like I don't know. Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre I'll probably watch this month just because it's a iconic horror movie. I really enjoy it. Probably watch
Hmm.
both of them. But it's not a or Sleepaway Camp, we've been talking about that. It's not really like a Halloween movie. Like it doesn't take
Right.
place during Halloween. It's just a horror movie.
Yeah.
Where Haunt, when I watch it, I just no matter what month is, I feel like I'm in October.
Yeah.
Like that's just how it feels. It gives that feeling of going to one of those huge haunted houses with live actors and everything like that. So
Mm.
that's kind of a movie that I always is a must for me.
You just reminded me of a movie that I, funny enough, have seen twice that is really bad. It's a really like it's bad. But what you just said, you could watch it anytime and feel like you're in October. The title of the film, The Houses October Built.
Wait, I feel like I know what this movie is. I haven't seen it, but I know what you're talking about. That movie's
Yeah,
pretty bad.
it's like a found footage, like haunted house horror film.
What do you think of found footage movies?
I I'm a fan generally. I have never seen the Blair Witch Project, and I know that's like the de facto found footage that basically started the genre.
Yeah.
I just haven't seen it yet. The House is October built. I remember watching it. I think on, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think I've seen it three times because I think I watched it on Netflix. Knew it was bad, but I'm like, it did something. Like it kind of invoked that Halloween feeling, and it might maybe
Yeah.
it's just the title, maybe it's just like because it's in the movie, but it flipped a switch.
Yeah, dude,
And
that's like the thing with I feel like no other month maybe like Hallmark Christmas movies have that effect where I feel like actual like they take place during fall or October movies that aren't that great, like get a huge boost when they take
mm-hmm.
place. But if you watch a movie that takes place in February, it's gonna get graded the same. But
Yeah,
like, I don't know, it's one of those things. Like the House is October built for you, it sounds like gets a boost during October just because it feels like you're in that world.
yeah.
Um,
And
Same with
I
Hallmark
have
Christmas movie. Like that's the only two categories I could think of.
I have the sequel, The House is October Built 2 on Blu-ray, and I
Electric
have yet,
Boogaloo.
yeah, I think that is the subtitle.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen that one yet. So I'm excited to give The House is October Built another rewatch with some new eyes, and then get the sequel in and see like how did they make a sequel out of this?
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, last thing and then I guess we could wrap it up. But dude, I feel like the found footage genre was one of the most oversaturated, like very quickly oversaturated genres in like
Mm,
ever. I feel like there's just so many. I feel like there's more of those than slasher movies. Like if somehow the slasher movie genre could keep getting brought back and people think there's something new to it, which is true. There is some newer ones, but the found footage genre, I feel like somehow they just don't know how to spice it up. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right spot or what. I don't know.
well, you know what? I haven't seen like off the top of my head, I can't think of like a found footage film that really like. Well, actually, what was a good one? You know, it was a good found footage film. What was it? Creep. Did you see
Oh
Creep?
yeah. Yeah.
I thought the
That's a pretty
sequel was
good
good
one.
too. Yeah, I thought
That's a
both of them
pretty
were
good
good.
quick watch too.
It is. Yeah, it's. I don't even think it's an hour and 20 minutes. I think it's like an hour 17 or something like that. Like it's really short.
Yeah, that's a
But
pretty good one.
I've seen the first one I think twice, the sequel once. Really enjoyed them.
Yeah.
I thought that was like you said, I think that one did enough to really like freshen up what a found footage film is.
Yeah. I
Or
think
at
they just
least
all just make it too unrealistic. That's like always
mm,
the complaint.
yeah.
To where if you can make it feel like you actually found it. Like that's probably what that's why the Blair Witch Project's so popular. It feels like you actually just found,
Right.
which sometimes like that's just boring. Like so like if you actually found someone's like like someone went through something terrible and you watched it all being filmed, there'd be parts of it that probably aren't that interesting,
Right,
but
yeah.
that's also part of the genre. So, um, but sweet dude, I think we did it again. What do you think?
Yes, yes, we did.
Awesome,
Felt
awesome.
good.
Well, we'll be back here to recap how you're doing on your 31 day challenge. I think I'm gonna try and run maybe 100 miles this month. I've been getting back into running, so I'm gonna try and do 100 miles this month. That's gonna kind of be my challenge. But um, for everyone who made it this far, be sure to tune in for the next pins and punches. Keep watching wrestling breaking news, and we'll stay on top of Josh's movie journey. And we'll be right back here with UFC and wrestling updates. Sound good?
Sounds good. Till
All
next
right.
time, everyone.
Yep. Till next time. Bye, everybody.